This podcast contains details about sexual abuse and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Throughout this podcast, we have heard the official version of the night of the Stocks family murders. In this episode, we will hear the details of that night from Heath Stocks himself. We will be hearing from Rob Evatt, Mac Carter, Charles Peckett, and Heath Stocks. In a previous episode, Rob Evatt shared with us what he went through at the hands of Jack Walls. During our conversation, he also shared with us his memories of January 17th, 1997. While Heath was having dinner with his grandparents, Rob was at the high school, having recently taken on a new project with the band director.
When I was in high school in Lone Oak, I was in band. And when I had first went to college, I was a music education major and wanted to be a band director. And at some point in 97, I had come back to Lone Oak. I was living back home with my mom and dad, and I knew the band director that was at the high school, and I was kind of in between college and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with everything. And I had approached the band director about putting together a pep band for the high school basketball team. We had always had marching band, but we had never had anything for any of, basketball or the other sports. And when I was in college, I played in the basketball pep bands and really enjoyed them. And so I was given the green light to basically put together a pep band for the Lone Oak High School basketball games. And anyways, got together a group of people, and we went to the game that night and set everything up, and we, started playing. And I didn't realize that where we were set up was actually right in front of where the cheerleaders were. And I had known Heather for a long time, obviously knowing Heath and knowing the family. I'd known her since she was much younger. And of course, she was on the cheerleading squad. And as we started playing, she and I started talking. And during the downtime between playing songs, and we started talking about what songs we were going to play and what cheers they knew and how we were going to coordinate everything, and started having some fun with the cheerleaders. One of the things we would do is we would start out the fight song, and then we would slow it down really, really slow. And Heather and the other girls on the team, they would start laughing because it was so slow they couldn't do their motions and do their cheers and everything. And then the second time through, we would play it so incredibly fast that they couldn't keep up with it. And she and I had a really good time talking that night and talking about what we were going to do and what was coming up. And when the game was over, I went down and talked to her some more about, how everything went, and told her I had a really good time that night. And we started discussing that to take a look at some of the other games that were coming up and some of the songs that we knew and some of the cheers that they knew, and try to figure out how to start coordinating all this. And, it was kind of funny because Heath had always said that, Heather was off limits to all the guys. And a lot of the guys had never asked her out. And I don't even know if she was even dating anyone at the time, but she was a few years younger than me. But, as we were talking and we had kind of tentatively made plans for later the next week to try to get together one night, and I started thinking that maybe I should ask her out. Maybe she'd want to go out tonight, after the game, and go somewhere with Sonic and grab something or whatever. And I held back, and I didn't. And when we parted, I said, well, I'll call you later next week and we'll get together and discuss everything. And that night I stayed uptown for a little while, and back then used to cruise town after the games. I lived about 5 minutes from Heath and Heather. We all lived out in Furlough, the little community, about 15 minutes outside of Lone Oak. So I lived fairly close to them. And as I was going home that night, I took the interstate and happened to look over. There's a section of the interstate and the state highway that run parallel for probably about 3 miles maybe. And I looked over and I could see police cars, blue lights. And, I'm on the interstate, I'm driving however fast I am, and they're driving faster than I am on the state highway. And I remember, wow, I wonder what's going on. Something must have happened. And then it was the next morning that I get a phone call from a friend of mine that told me what had happened. And it kind of hit me that those blue lights were going, those were the police cars going to her house. And of course, I didn't even know what to think, because by the time I had gotten the phone call, I mean, it was less than 24 hours prior that, we were just talking and having a good time and having fun with the music. And she was laughing and I was laughing with her. And we were going to get together later that week and talk about what we were going to do with the band and the cheerleaders and how we were going to work together to make it fun and to try to do this thing and to try to keep it going. Needless to say, that was the only time that band played. I couldn't do it after that.
During our interviews for the podcast, we asked a few people if they thought that Jack Walls might have been involved in the murders of Heath's family. And we wanted to share a couple of these opinions with you, namely Matt Carter and Charles Peckett.
So you think that Jack ordered the killing of Heath's family?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that as much as anything. He had reason to do it. We do know what happened to Mr. Hogan being ostracized. People had motivation not to stand up to this family. And the way things can happen in a small town, especially down here, things can happen and no one will open their mouth because there will be reprisals. Once the outsiders get out of the way, sooner or later, there's going to be some things, not necessarily physical, but you will be somewhat ostracized from the community. Apparently that's what happened to Mr. Cletus Hogan. And so I don't know where the tentacles went from the Walls family, but Jack Walls Jr. definitely had motivation to keep his power because he was one of the pillars of the community. And that came with a lot of privilege. His number one privilege was having a host of young men every year come aboard, new victims that he could control and molest and feed his perversions off of. So he had plenty of motivation to keep things quiet.
Who do you think stood the most to gain with the Stocks dying?
Was Jack Walls.
And who had the most to lose?
Had the most to lose was Heath. I've said that all along, that if you really look at this story, why in the world would Heath want to kill his parents? I can understand. I'm not saying it's right. It definitely is not right that he shot his dad. I can see that he shot his dad, but his mother and his sister, I just don't see that. I just can't see that he shot his mother and his sister. I think that somebody else was there. And Jack Walls had the most to lose. If that got out, that he was in bed with Heath, and got out to the public that he was in bed with Heath, then what would happen happened. When we started the investigation, it blossomed out. People started talking, saying, yeah, this happened to me. Yep, this happened to me. And it started blossoming out. That had to be stopped, and it was stopped when that family was killed.
So you think Jack had something to do with it?
My opinion, my personal opinion is yes, he did. Whether it be verbally or he physically shot somebody. But he had something to do with it.
Did Heath tell you that Jack told him to kill his parents?
Yes.
Did that surprise you?
No. At some point, his parents became a threat. And when his parents became a threat to him, then he's going to eliminate them.
According to Heath, a few weeks before the murders, he and his father Joe had gotten into an argument at the house because Joe had been rough with Barbara. Heath told his father to never lay a hand on her again. This led to a physical altercation between Heath and Joe. While on the ground, Joe had his hands around Heath's neck and told him, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. Heath ended up moving out and moved in with his mother's parents. Soon after, his mother called him and asked him to please move home, and they would figure it out. He still had his pending DWI charge to deal with, and his father didn't like the way people were talking about Heath leaving home and moving in with his grandparents. Heath agreed to work it out and moved back home at Barbara's request.
I remember coming home that night. Mom was in the kitchen. She was cooking. And she had written me a note because she didn't know if she was going to catch me before they left. My sister was in the back. She was getting ready. She had her cheerleading uniform on. She was getting ready to go cheer at a basketball game. So Mom had left a note. She said, look, I left you this note. I was making some food for your dad. If you want something, you can eat. He hadn't come home yet, but when he does, he's going to shower, and we're going to go to the game. But your Uncle JT is here from California, and he's over there at Grandma and Grandpa's house. So they would like you to go out to eat with them. So I got cleaned up, dressed, and went to Dorothy's house. They lived probably, 2 miles away, 3 miles away. They lived in Furlough with us. I go over there, and of course, Uncle JT, that's my Grandpa Martin's little brother from California. Of course, he's my Uncle JT, and I don't see him very often, maybe once a year, if that. So it's always good to see him. So we all pile in the vehicle, and we're driving to Jacksonville to the Western Sizzler, which was a very popular place that offered steaks and baked potatoes and a salad bar and an all-you-can-eat bar. And growing up, we went there on a regular basis. So I don't remember how it came up, but apparently my dad had been talking to my grandpa and my grandma, Heath Stocks, and Benny over how much money I had cost him going to college and failing, and that I had these pending charges against me when I was up at college. And they were telling me, which is the first time I'd heard it, that my dad was not going to pay the fine. He wanted me to go to jail and sit in jail till I worked my fine off. And maybe it would be enough to motivate me to do something in my life. So I was angry and upset, and, to hear these things, not directly from him, but to know that he shared with them. And here's Uncle JT, and, and they're all talking about it. And it's hard to ever talk about my dad around Dorothy, especially around Martin, his dad. Looking back, I wish that I could have talked to my Uncle JT about, maybe going to California for a fresh start. But I was so lost mentally in my own world that I couldn't see a way out. And the few outs that I considered had closed up very quickly. We went to Walmart after that. He was trying to fix something. He had to stop and get some kind of plumbing supplies or something at Walmart. And then we went from there. We went back to her house. And so we get to her house. We talked for a little while. And I leave. And I'm reflecting on all this stuff. Dad, everything that they had said, I'm thinking, I may just go to jail. I can just remember driving slowly home, kind of just lost in this funk. And turn down a road, go down the road, pull up to the house, and I look back, and as I'm pulling in, and I can see a brown truck in the pasture. And Jack used to park his truck out there. And what it was is the way our house was, we had chain link around the yard, and we had a pasture. In that pasture, my dad had got rock poured so that he would have a place to park his semis and trailers out there by the house. And there was a big round spot out there where you could turn around. Jack, anytime my dad had a trailer and he'd come over the house, he'd park his truck back there. And if you weren't paying attention when look, you could drive by the house, the trailers would block you seeing this truck there. So I saw his truck. And I pull up, and, my stomach's just knots. I've got this sense of dread. Don't know what's going to happen. And so I turn the car off, and I get out. I remember how cold it was, and how walking on the gravel, and how everything, there wasn't any wind. It was just very cold. And so I walk up to the house and open the door. I walk in, and lights are off. There's a light on in the kitchen, and to the left is our den. So I can see light flashing in there, which is usually, what you see when the TV is on, because our couch and everything faced that doorway, and the TV was against that wall. So I walk in, and there's Jack sitting on the couch. It's just like he's at home. And he's got a remote in his hand. He's flipping through channels. And he's looking at me over the top of his glasses. And I can remember seeing the the reflection from the TV shining in his glasses and how he's flicking the channels, and it's just very surreal, the lighting, that blue TV lighting in a dark room and how it makes everything look so dark. And off to the right, back where Dad moved the gun cabinet, I could see a silhouette back there. And I knew who it was before I even saw him. And, of course, it was Wade. And I remember looking at him and him looking at me. Jack saying, "You know why we're here?" And he told me, he said, "You caused this. You did this." About that time, I hear wheels on the gravel outside. And, of course, we had a gravel driveway, so anytime that you pulled off the main road and drove up the house, you could hear the wheels in gravel. And so, I hear somebody pull up, and I hear the engine cut off. And Wade walks up to me and hands me the pistol. It was my dad's .45. And about that time, I heard the front door open. And I turned and walked to the kitchen, and it was Heather. And so she comes in, she said, "Heath, what happened? What happened?" And, because the house is a mess. And there were papers in the floor, doors had been opened, and so she walks to the kitchen, and she said, "Have we been robbed? Have we been robbed?" And I'm looking at her, I'm like, "No, Heather, I need you to go. I need you to go. And I need you to get out of the house." And she said, no, we need to call 911. And she goes over there, she picks up the phone, and I told her, I said, "Heather, please get out of the house." And she turned and looked at me. And I walked back into the living room. And I got down on my knees and I stuck the gun in my mouth. And I looked at him. I looked at Jack. And I tried to squeeze the trigger. And I just couldn't. And I remember him laughing at me and calling me a coward. And Wade stepped forward. He stuck out his hand. I gave him the gun. I felt him step behind me, walk into the kitchen. I heard Heather scream, "Bubba," and I heard a shot. Wade walks back into the living room. And Jack looks at me and says, "That's that." At the time, I hear another vehicle pull up, which has to be Mom and Dad in the van. And the next thing I remember hearing is Mom opening the door. She comes in. I hear her scream. And she runs the door, and I can hear her screaming for Joe. And so she runs back over where I'm assuming Heather was laying on the floor. And my dad comes to the door, and I want to say Mom said, "She's gone." And Wade handed me the gun back. I got up, I walked into the kitchen, and I'm just the gun hanging up my side. And I was trying to take everything in. Heather's laying on the floor. Mom's over there by her. Dad's got the phone in his hand. Mom's screaming. And she looked up and she sees me. And she says, "Joe." And my dad's spun around. And I want to say he screamed, that he rushed me. And I took a step back and I pulled up the gun and I shot. And he kept coming. I shot again. He dropped. He was crawling towards me. I shot again. And I'm just standing there. And Mom's over there screaming, "No, no." I feel Jack step up behind me. He says, "Somebody shut that bitch up." And Mom's sitting there screaming. And so Wade's there beside me. He gets the gun. He walks over the drawer. He gets a knife. Jacks his shell out. Puts another one in. Raises his hand. He shot my mom right in the ear, and she dropped. He walked, pop, shot them, made sure they were dead, picked up the cases, and walked over and stood in front of me. When Wade paused in front of me, I did not know if I was going to be next. Because I had not done what Jack told me to do, and that was to fix the problem that I created when I told Mom and Heather about what he had been doing to me. But Wade had picked up the shell cases. He gave me the gun. It was a plastic bag of stuff that he gave to me. And Jack told me, he said, "You caused this. You did this." And I remember walking out to my car, putting the stuff in the car, and going to the only place that I know I could. And that was back to Arkadelphia. As far away as I could get, I guess in my small little world memory, going back to the people that I had shared with, I had talked to about Jack, anywhere but there. And I'll never forget going up there. I realized the jewelry was in there. I threw it in the dumpster. And then I realized the gun stuff, I threw it in the river. And threw some other stuff in the trash can on the way over to where Heath and Kelly lived. And I get over there, and I wanted to talk to Heath. I shared so much with him, and I just wanted a safe place. I needed to go somewhere where I felt safe and could talk to somebody, and that they cared. And he wasn't there, and Kelly was. And so I went over there to Kelly's, sick to my stomach about everything that happened. And I can remember puking in her bathroom. And I'll never forget asking her if I could use her phone and calling home because I could not believe what happened. And I remember telling Kelly, he said, "Nobody's answering. Something's wrong." It was so surreal. I called home. And I don't know if I expected either them to answer or Jack to answer, but I needed somebody to answer just to grasp reality again. It was that devastating, mind-blowing. And so Kelly went to the store. She got me something that had codeine in it, some cough syrup or something. And I drank it, and I laid down, and woke up the next morning to boom, boom, boom on the door. And the police looking for me. And it's been a nightmare that I've never waked from ever since. I didn't know it was going to be that night. I didn't know what was going to happen. But with everything that happened with Doug, there was a part of me that wondered if one of the other boys wouldn't end up shooting me or shooting them, or what would happen. But I do know this, that if I had not been a part of that, I would have died there too, because it would have been just as easy for the crime scene to be set up, them get shot, and me commit suicide. And there'd been no questions. And with everything that my dad had been telling family and friends about his frustrations with me and the problems, it would have looked like this 20-year-old kid that lost his mind and killed his family and then committed suicide from the grief of taking their life. I truly believe that. If I had not been involved, I still would have died, and I would have died right there with him. And we wouldn't be having this conversation. Nobody would have ever known. I talked to multiple people. I had people reach out to me afterward that knew Wade and that Wade talked to. And Wade had told them that Jack tried to force him to go, and he didn't want to go, and he told him that if he did not go, his family would be next. It's one of the reasons why I never brought up Wade, because I felt guilty for Wade even being there. Because I refused to do what Jack told me to do. It got Wade dragged into it. And I felt guilty that he'd been forced to be a part of something he didn't want to be a part of. Neither one of us wanted to be a part of what was happening with Doug and Cletus. Neither one of us wanted to be there that night and be a part of what happened there. And he damn sure didn't want to be a part of having to kill his own parents and siblings either, where we weren't ourselves. I don't blame Wade. I'm not trying to shift responsibility and make this about Wade, because Wade was just as much, if not more, of a victim and manipulated into what happened as I was. What was frustrating is that after everything that came out about Jack, when people started asking questions and Wade was going around telling people that he knew things about the crime scene, about what things happened, and that if I deserved to be in prison for the rest of my life, so did he, people started asking questions. Jack said several different things when he came to see me, and I repeated some of those things later on to different people. He did say that he was going to help me. He was going to do everything in his power to help me out of the situation. But he reminded me that I caused this, that I had done it. And I remember him making some comment about him being right about me and me not having a conscience. And I said that several times over the years, and I never understood what he was saying. But later on, I was like, did I inadvertently repeat something that hurt me, that he intended to hurt me? Because I did have a conscience. I've always had a conscience. What happened devastated me, and it hurts me to my core this very day. I mean, my sister was beloved by everyone. She was popular in school. She was smart. She was beautiful. She was my best friend. She had helped me in so many things. And I miss her every day. You know, we used to talk every day. But it's hard. It's hard to look around at this 6x9 cell and all this concrete steel and feel courageous. That makes me feel like a coward. That I didn't stand up. That I didn't fight. That I couldn't fight. That was one of the things that always got me over the years. I had all these people that asked me, said, why didn't you shoot him? And it never even dawned on me. I thought about shooting myself, but I never once thought about shooting him.
In addition to the multiple documents that we have and have discussed throughout this podcast, we do have a couple of notarized affidavits that we wanted to share as well. They were obtained and provided to us by Samantha Jones, who is currently writing a book on Heath's story. We have left out their names to protect their privacy. These have never been heard before and are available for legal inquiries. The first one being from a friend of Wade's, and it says, I, being 21 years or older, do hereby state under oath that I have personal knowledge and I am competent to testify to the following facts. In this affidavit, she states that during 1994 and 1997, I was a student at Lonoke County High School. It was during this time that I became acquainted with Heath Stocks and his sister Heather, both fellow students. In addition to being acquainted with Stocks, I was also acquainted with Wade Knox, a fellow student and neighbor. During the course of my friendship with Wade, we frequented the same gatherings and interacted with mutual friends. In 1999, I saw Wade at the depot, where he arrived intoxicated. Wade didn't live far from me at the time, so I got in his truck and drove him home. During the drive to Wade's house, Wade began stating, he made me do it. I didn't think much of his comments, as I believed he was just intoxicated. Upon reaching Wade's house, Wade asked me to wait a minute before going home. It was at this time that Wade told me of his presence at the scene and his participation in the Stocks murders. I was aware of Heath's prior confession to the Stocks murders and found Wade's comment confusing. Wade clarified by stating he killed Heather and Barbara Stocks, Heath's sister and mother. Furthermore, Wade stated, "You don't understand. Jack was there too." He made sure I finished the job. At this point, I insisted Wade go to the house, and I left for home in tears. The following morning, I went to see Wade again at his home, seeking clarification of his comments to me the night before. He confirmed his prior statement, saying, "I'm sorry, but it's true." I was devastated by his confession and told him that he had to turn himself in. Wade insisted that he could not, and that I also could never tell or, quote, something awful might happen. I was unclear if what he said was an actual threat or if he was simply scared. I assured Wade I would not tell anyone the information given to me, but I did ask him for more details. He stated the following. Heath and his father Joe got into it, and Heath shot him several times. Heath wouldn't, quote, finish the job, so Jack made Wade finish it. Wade shot Heather twice, once in the chest area and once in the head. Wade shot Barbara. Charles Jack Walls III was present and witnessed everything. I never discussed the things Wade told me after his confession to me. I was scared. After Wade's suicide in 2003, I tried to talk to others to see if anyone else knew of the information that Wade had shared with me. Numerous individuals confirmed knowing the same information but refused to come forward, even warning me not to say anything. Regretfully, I have not until now. This is signed and dated April 20th, 2018.
We also have an affidavit from the widow of Wade Knox. Her affidavit states, I, being 21 years or older, do hereby state under oath that I have personal knowledge and am competent to testify to the following facts. On several occasions in my presence, Wade would become upset, inconsolable, and fearful of Walls for numerous already stated reasons, but also because of the knowledge and information of the Stocks murders that Wade concealed yet confided in me. Those items include but are not limited to: Wade was present at the scene of the Stocks murders at 771 Johnson Road on January 17, 1997. Walls was present at the scene of the Stocks murders at 771 Johnson Road on January 17, 1997, to ensure the Stocks murders occurred. Heath Stocks arrived after the robbery of the Stocks home was staged. Wade, under duress and control of Walls, shot and killed Barbara Stocks and Heather Stocks. Heath Stocks, under duress and control of Walls, shot and killed his father, Joe Stocks. Wade lived in continuous fear and paranoia of Walls until his death in 2003. On July 20th, 2019, Sword and Scale podcast released episode plus 52. I was interviewed on April 24th, 2019 for this episode. Included in my response is the following. Because it wasn't just Heath there, it was Wade, Jack, and the deal was that if Wade didn't participate, they were going to repeat the process at his house. And Wade said that Heath shot his dad, and he just kind of fell apart, and he couldn't kill his mom, and he couldn't kill his sister. Wade said that Jack made him kill his mom. So here's Heath. He's sitting in prison all these years for killing 3 people. This boy was so scared of somebody locked up in a jail cell that he can't tell the truth. And if he did, who would believe him? And then here I am, sitting on the truth for all these years. This is dated January 21st, 2020.
After sharing his story with us and talking more about Heath and what he's been through, Rob decided that he wanted to get on Heath's visitation list and go visit him again after all these years. Can I talk to you about what made you want to go visit Heath again?
There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about everything that happened. I mean, everything. Jack, Heath, Heather, the other boys, because there was so much stuff that had happened with so many different people. The number of triggers is almost infinite. between people's names and places that I've been, or anytime you would hear someone going to prison, or I would hear the name Jack or hear the name Heather. And so I had always kind of thought in the back of my mind that I always wondered what he was doing. And in life, actually, I think Doug said it, life kind of gets in the way. And you get married, you get a career, you have kids, and you try to figure out how to get your life together. And I'm not going to say that you forget, but it does become kind of out of sight, out of mind. And the resurgence with his case and the interest in, the Boy Scouts and the abuse that's happened nationwide obviously has kind of brought everything back into the spotlight again. And especially for me, it's really kind of hit me in the face. It made me kind of realize that Heath did something that he shouldn't have done. I don't know to the full extent exactly what that was, because there are some questions about everything that happened, but it's not my place to decide his punishment. But I do know that I don't think that he got the support that he needed. I don't think that he got the fair shake that he could have gotten. And even though it may be later than what it should have been, I would like for him to know that those of us that were bonded through this horrific event, we're all still out here. And, we can all use that knowledge that in some way we're all still together. We went through this, we have this commonality that we share. And now that we're older and we can deal with it and life is not in the way anymore, this gives me an opportunity to go see him. And I don't know if closure is the right word, because it's really not. Seeing him now would almost be reopening instead of closing anything. But to let him know that, yeah, something happened and it did happen, but there's still people that think about you. There's still people that still want whatever the best is that he can get. I want that for him. I want him to know that we all went through this and we're all hurting and healing in our own different ways. And maybe there's something that with the two of us talking and meeting, maybe there's something that will help one of us heal. And if it does, then it's worth the time to go do it.
I really appreciate that. Was there anything else you wanted to share?
I don't even know at this point. Like I said, the past 3 or 4 weeks have been just kind of a big thing. I guess talking about Heather, one thing that I still do, my father passed away about 13 years ago. Concord United Methodist Church, which is where Heath and Heather went to church, there's a cemetery there. And that cemetery is actually my family cemetery. My great-grandfather is from that area and at one time owned many, many plots in that cemetery. And that's where my dad is buried. And he is buried probably no more than 100 feet from Heather and Joe and Barbara. And, every time that I go see my dad, I still go down there and see her and Joe and Barbara. And, there is I don't know if it's survivor's guilt, but I still think back to that night. Had I asked her out, had she have gone, had we decided to go somewhere and get something, would she have come home at a later time and maybe that would have been avoided? I might have taken her home since we lived that close together, and I might have been there when everything would have happened. And that's hard for me to deal with sometimes, to think about that, the what ifs with that. I still probably, I'll probably visit her once a year. Anytime I go to see my dad, I go to see her too.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that's a lot.
Yeah, it is, because you just, like I said, the what ifs just kind of take over, and you have to not let them do that. This whole thing that is just coming to the spotlight again after so many years of it finally, kind of being put to rest and in my rearview mirror, and then all of a sudden it's back up in my life again. But to be very honest, I'm in a very good, solid, stable place in my life right now. And, this is probably the best time that all of this is going to come back up. So
I'm so happy to hear that you're in a good, solid place.
yeah, like I said, I'm I guess excited is the right word. Heath was my friend. I'll be happy to see my friend. I will. I'm excited to see someone that I haven't seen in 25 years or better. And, the last time I saw him was sitting in a courtroom across the aisle from each other. And the last time that we saw each other, it was kind of a smile and a head nod, a unsaid, "Hey, how are you?" And "I'm good." And, and so now I guess we're going to pick that conversation up 26 years later and, and see how it goes.
In the next episode, we will discuss Heath's multiple attempts to have his case looked at again and to be granted clemency.
Did Jack's control and alleged involvement in the murders have any impact on Heath's future clemency attempts?
Are there any options available to Heath that could help him receive a reduced sentence?
After all of these years, have the conflicts and corruption continued? Life Without, the untold story of Heath Stocks, is brought to you by Watts Productions and Block Party.
Produced by Dylan Edward Allen, Colby Watts, and Katie Anthony.
Archival materials provided by the Stocks family, the Harris family, Samantha Jones, and the Freedom of Information Act. Music by Collin Thomas. All information in this podcast is based on interviews from people close to the case, never before seen insider documents, legal documents, FOIA documents, victim impact statements, and sworn affidavits. All parties mentioned in this podcast are innocent until proven guilty. For more information on this podcast and Heath Stocks, visit heathstockspodcast.com. For more information about the groundbreaking Scouts film, which features Heath Stocks, visit scoutsdocumentary.com.